We know that Lucy Letby, as of the last few days, is appealing not just her sentence, a whole life term, but also the conviction itself, as if we need a reminder.
I didn't think she could.
Well, one can make an application for leave to appeal. That's permission from a single judge sitting as a Court of Appeal judge on paper, who's usually a High Court judge working at the weekends. So you can retain that in your brain. It took me a few years to manage the same. Basically, you need to apply in writing for permission to appeal. Okay, you can't just appeal because you disagreed with the fact that the evidence was circumstantial, as many of the kind of die-hard, the small party of die-hard Lucy Letby fans and supporters who say, well, this was only circumstantial. I'll say a little bit about that in a minute, but you can't just say I disagreed with what the jury said. You have to say the judge got the evidence wrong, what could be admitted before the jury, what was said about it, or the jury were told things by, for example, prosecuting counsel that they shouldn't have been allowed, that the prosecuting barrister shouldn't have been allowed to get away with. You've heard me talk, I think, previously of Nick Johnson, KC, one of the best criminal barristers in the country, actually defends as much as he prosecutes. I doubt he made a mistake, but I'm not the Court of Appeal. She's appealing against conviction. This type of case, well, there was that kind of lots of what some people might call circumstantial evidence, but let's be very careful about assuming that circumstantial evidence means no evidence. DNA of an assailant on a rape victim is circumstantial evidence. It's also rather compelling. It's not somebody saying, I saw this person do it, but it's evidence that requires or that gives rise to a possible inference and can require an explanation. And circumstantial evidence can be very strong like that, or it could be simply, for example, that this was the nurse on shift in all of these 7 unlikely events, her behavior before, during, and after those events being strange, her special position of care of those babies, and therefore the opportunity for her to commit those foul acts. And of course, those damning diary entries. None of those are evidence of somebody saying, I saw her do it, but combined, it was compelling circumstantial evidence. So thought the jury. And I don't think, and I'm not going to go behind the Court of Appeal, and I don't think they listen to me anyway, Trisha, but I don't think that this will get as far as having permission to appeal.
That? Does she have to pay for that? Or does she get, to do an appeal? Do you have to pay?
As part of the legal aid order that was awarded to her if she was funded on legal aid, and I assume that was the case, part of the fees paid to counsel include, if appropriate, advice on appeal. It's rolled into the fee that they received legal aid on legal aid. And if somebody's entitled to a fair trial by having legal aid in the first place, I think the argument would go, and I'm very sympathetic with that argument, the argument would go that they're also entitled, if things go wrong, for them to be told by their barrister that things have gone wrong and the application to be made. We're not talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds because the work is already done. The barrister's been in court, the barrister's read the papers, they write the advice. However, there is also a potential appeal against sentence. And this one is more interesting from a legal point of view, and we'll probably hear a bit more about it, Trisha. Here is why. Whole life orders, the sentence that she received, albeit in her absence, but we're not going to go into all that. We know what a furore that was.
Not going into the
sentence that she received, absolutely. And the sentence that she received, that was a whole life order. My understanding is that's only the third whole life order applicable to a woman. There are only a few dozen whole life orders that are currently ongoing in the UK. And that's considering all of the murder cases. And there are several hundred murders in the UK every year, Trisha. So
she wants to get that changed.
Yeah, and it's natural that she would, whether you agree with it or not. It's predictable in the same way that people plead not guilty, sometimes even when they've done it, that she will try to appeal that. She'll be trying to get everything she can for herself. I think that will go as far as the Court of Appeal. Whether that will then be successful, given the public sentiment. And the Court of Appeal is a relatively political court. Not that it needs to be here. I don't think that will be successful, but this is a lawyer who's not in the case's opinion.